Alright, well everyone, this is your Peacekeeper, just bringing you a match with my Iowa, my fully upgraded Iowa. As you can see, the matchmaker kind of, I don't know, I thought it wasn't too bad. I mean, okay, we have a carrier that's a bit overpowered, but whatever. I felt bad for the Izumo players to have to go up against two Iowa players, especially two Iowa players that have had lots of experience playing with each other. That's alright. At any rate, like I said, this is the fully upgraded Iowa. This match ended up coming out to be in just shy of 205,000 damage in one match. It was streamed live on Twitch TV, which you can follow me, twitchtv.com/yourpeacekeeper, and you can watch the game there. Also, you'll notice a couple things about this Iowa that some people probably wouldn't necessarily choose. Number one, you'll notice there's no camouflage on it. It's kind of hard at tier 9 to get good games where you make enough money to come out ahead. I seem to swing between strings of good games and strings of bad games, so I just saved myself the 12,000 credits for the 4% reduction in hits. You'll also notice that around the gun barrels and the turrets, I've fixed the texture and replaced the little white gun bags, barrel bags, whatever you want to call them, around the turrets, where the barrel meets the turret, changed them to black like they should be. You'll notice that I am using a couple of Aslane's mods from his mod pack. One of them is the reticle Tic Tac for Eye of Sauron. I'm also using the last known location mod for the mini-map and the extra zoom out. One of the things I did want to actually point out in this, though, is just general idea of what some of the upper tier players are doing with regards to how they play battleships and what to do and hopefully what not to do. One thing to keep in mind is that the Iowa doesn't have a particularly small citadel. Alright, so we got our first customer of the day. It's an Izumo, and I kind of, you can see I'm sitting at about the 5 mark, and that's going to be a recurring theme. At first Salvo goes out, and of course I lose sight of him, and he'll pop right back up before the rounds hit, but you'll notice pretty solid hit from 18, almost 19 kilometers, 2 hits for about 8,200 damage, I think it was. I don't know why after shooting him he decided that he was just going to keep traveling in the same line he's been shooting at. It just doesn't make sense, but that's okay. I think it's not in Atlanta that's shooting at me. I can't remember what was shooting at me, but I'll go ahead and take another pot shot at the Izumo, and you'll notice that after every shot I'm zooming back out and looking around, doing my quick little peek, and here's the first citadel of the match. The Izumo has a massive citadel. You've got the 3 turrets that are right next to each other, and all 3 of them are basically connected, and then you've got right basically at the base of the giant pagoda to the smokestack, just after the smokestack. A very large citadel there. Take one more final pot shot before I start losing sight of him, because I'm traveling in the opposite direction of him. And you'll notice where I'm aiming at, right around the middle. These shots end up taking out his steering and not doing a whole lot of damage, but you know, there it is. So at this point, Woe_9, and I are headed down the 1-2-3 line, which is not something I normally do. It's basically asking to have a carrier kill you, but there's no carrier in this match, so I figured why not. We got an Ichizuchi that is, for whatever reason, moving just parallel, not even really trying to dodge or evade. At the last minute he starts turning in, it's too late. Almost 18k damage in another citadel. And you can see, for whatever reason, I don't know what happened in this match. It's kind of interesting. A lot of players don't seem to be paying too much attention to what's going on around them. And here we are, another Izumo, and you'll notice I'm lined up at the 5 mark again. If it worked for the first one, what's to say it's not going to work for the second one? Just go ahead and tell Woe to help me focus him down. And once again, you know, he's sitting stationary. That first volley goes over him. And by stationary, I meant he's not turning. That first volley will end up going over him. There's one thing I love about the Iowa. Long-range shots tend to bounce from cruisers. It's kind of a nice feature. Didn't take a whole lot of damage in that. But you'll notice, as soon as he started shooting at me, and really even just right after I took the shot, you'll notice that I started to turn into him. That's a good hit. No Citadel, but about the same amount of damage. 7 total hits. But anyway, you'll notice that I started turning into him, and that's because the Iowa has a really interesting armor profile in this game. If you are angled basically head-on towards somebody, they have a hard time really hitting anything of any value. I mean, it just seems to tank hits a lot better. He's starting to turn, and I'm kind of holding off because I know if I wait long enough, he's going to eventually turn broadside to me, which I don't know why he did, but I do eventually take a shot. And this time I pretty much confirmed that there's really nothing around me that's a real threat.
Confirmed penetration.
And there you have it, 3rd Citadel of the match. That Fuso is there. I am paying attention to him, so I start turning into him. And once again, you know, you maintain a small profile. 1, it's harder for battleships to hit you head into them, and 2, if they do hit you, it has a tendency to bounce off your armor, which is just an absolutely nice feature. Again, in Izumo, traveling perpendicular to me, just exposing that juicy Citadel, just... There it is again! So there's the first sink of the game. You can already see we're not even 7 minutes into the game, and I'm at 4 Citadels, which for this ship is just an asinine amount of Citadels. I let Woe know. Now, I would generally advise against shooting at, you know, a ship that's bladed like the Fuso is, which, you know, thankfully another target comes into sight. That poor little Miyogi doesn't even have any idea what's about to occur to him. That's okay. Again, traveling in a straight line. Go ahead and take off my shots. Shots go down range. They're lined up just perfect. Comes down.
Enemy severely damaged.
And 5th Citadel of the match. And dang near killed him. Now, for whatever reason, he's actually paying attention. He actually started turning away at this point. And I think I take one more shot at him while he's going away and end up missing him. But you can see I'm looking around, keeping my head on that swivel. There's a cruiser off behind me, but it's in Atlanta, so it's really not a threat. It's dealing with the New Mexico anyway. Here's that final, not the final, but here's a pot shot at that Miyogi. I wish I would have taken a little bit more time to figure out which direction he was actually going and how fast he was getting there. Woe's taking some pot shots. One thing I do recommend, you know, to new players to battleships is to pay attention to when you're shooting. You know, a lot of people, for whatever reason, feel like they should be shooting sequentially, meaning they fire one turret at a time, and I look at it this way. This is going to end up being a pretty good hit, but it doesn't kill him. And that's armor blading for you. He managed to blade himself just enough that the armor managed to basically make all but one shell effective. Now that Fuso is actually turned towards me, but he's actually turned sideways to me, exposing his Citadel, but I notice on this hit, he's shooting HE at me. That's probably smart because, you know, I'm headed basically straight for him, but I don't know. Shooting HE in a battleship has very limited purpose. Basically, I will only do it for destroyers. And there goes the second sink. And basically 9 minutes in, 5 Citadels. We're going to go back to him. He is, again, shooting HE at me, and I was hoping that he would start a second fire before I burn the repair, but I'm going to end up burning the repair anyway. There's Woe missing again. The Tic Tac mod for Eye of Sauron. I guess Eye of Sauron is not active on this computer. It's just a reticle with that name. There is actually a mod somewhere that changes your viewpoint to be permanently in the scout plane viewpoint. I don't have that mod. I personally am not comfortable using that mod. This Fuso, you know, he's turned at kind of an interesting angle. He's angled enough where it's hard for me to hit his citadel, but he's not angled enough to stop me from doing a lot of damage. It also doesn't help that our carrier is focusing on him as well. You just saw a dive bomber and a torpedo strike on him, and there's 6 hits and a critical for 11k. At this point, you know, there's a lot of ships ahead of us, but really there's 2 battleships that are really kind of a threat. The Pensacola hurts a lot, and so do those Otagos. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing those names right, but, you know, kind of more interested in killing off this Fuso because he's kind of their most damaging thing. There's a Baltimore way out there, but I'm nowhere near in range of him. At this point, the Fuso's turned at an angle that I wouldn't recommend shooting at, so I'm just continuing to look around for targets that are, you know, targets of opportunity. This is a shot where RNGesus screws me really bad. This is like, could not have been a more perfect lineup, but for whatever reason I got a bunch long and a bunch short and basically only got 2 hits. I was really disappointed in that. The Fuso ends up burning to death, so I switch back to the Pensacola. You know, he's sideways to me. Hopefully I can take him out. Then I realized that this battleship is just trucking along parallel to me. Okay, I'll take a shot at that. What's the worst that could happen? He misses. I got a nice tight cluster. There's 6 hits and a citadel for basically all of his life, all of his health. I guess this got somebody's attention. Everybody else decided that it was time to kill Peacekeeper because he's doing too much damage and clubbing baby seals. But this is a perfect example of how not to play a battleship. You know, I feel bad. It's a tier 4 premium, but by the same token, you should know better. And there's your punishment. And then there's the 7th citadel of the match, 3rd sink. I got a Pensacola that just died. Was going to shoot at him, and then I noticed the Otago's over here, so I guess I'll start shooting at him. And I'm starting to take rounds from this Baltimore that's off in the distance. It's kind of, those things hurt. 8-inch shells. Get my lead set up. Otagos are notoriously hard to hit. They're highly maneuverable, and they got really low profiles. But the interesting thing about Otagos is they actually have a pretty large citadel for a heavy cruiser in their tier. But as you can see, I totally whiffed it, so that is what it is. In general, my observations so far from this game is there are a lot of battleship drivers that were just flat out weren't paying attention, and that really helped rack up the points. You know, it is what it is, I guess. You also see there's me taking an opportunity to shoot at a ship that's turning. Sometimes you can get lucky and they'll turn far enough and you'll smack them in the side, but that one he didn't quite turn all the way over. Still, 2,700 damage isn't too bad. There's Woe complaining about not being able to hit anything. And we got a Baltimore that wants to play. Now, generally, I wouldn't advise going broadside to any heavy cruiser later in the game. Those 8-inch shells at close range can actually penetrate armor and do damage. Also, don't generally recommend shooting at ships moving towards or away from you, just because of the fact that it's harder to hit that target. But for whatever reason in this match, RNGesus decided to smile upon me. He's going to continue to shoot at me, but I got him focused on me. Woe's behind me, just off to what would be the starboard side of my ship, and I got a New Mexico this Baltimore is basically presenting as broadside too, so I'm distracting him heavily for that to occur. You'll see me try and put the fire out with the scout plane here in a couple seconds. But, you know, again, the Baltimore's not presenting much of a target for me to shoot at, so I'm just going to continue to shoot at him. I guess my hope was to ruin one of the front guns, and sure enough, I did. If nothing else, I forced him to do a reload. He's going to continue to look at me and try and kill me. I'm going to shoot again and get robbed by RNGesus. That should have been like the 4th or 5th kill. And here's Woe shooting, you know, there you go. There's the final kill. So, you look at it, 67, 74 base experience, 839, and just shy of 205,000 damage. That's pretty impressive. You know what? Throughout the video, you saw a number of times when, you know, ships were moving sideways or exposing their citadels to being hit, and that's a real big mistake. You know, the key with U.S. battleships in the early tiers is to close the distance by getting straight on and just kind of doing the wagging the tail thing. But in later tiers, you've got enough speed and versatility that you can kind of get away with kind of dogging in and dogging out, dogging in, dogging out, like you saw me dog in towards their cap. And as soon as that Baltimore started putting some, you know, hurt on me, I started to duck out of there and let Woe get between us. And by that time, the game was over. But had there been other ships, that would have probably saved my bacon. The biggest thing I can recommend is if you're taking fire from an enemy ship, to start maneuvering as soon as you see them shoot. If nothing else is going to mitigate how much damage you take, maybe even cause them to miss entirely. If you're not paying attention, that's a problem. That's a situational awareness issue that needs to be resolved. I'm your Peacekeeper, signing off. Just thought this was an interesting video to show you. 205,000 damage, 3 sinks, 7 citadels. Quite a game.